Hello everyone, I'm Holly Race and my first novel, Midnight's Twins, came out June 2020 and the sequel, A Gathering Midnight, came out June 2021. They're part of a YA urban fantasy trilogy set between this world and the world we go to when we dream, where a secret army founded by King Arthur protects us from our nightmares. One of the things people often say about Midnight's Twins and A Gathering Midnight is that they're very filmic. This might have something to do with the fact that when I'm not writing books, I work as a script editor for film and TV. Now, script editors are the screen equivalent of book editors. We find new writers and new ideas, we commission writers, and we work with them to make their script the best that it can be. The difference between a script editor and a book editor is that sometimes script editors will come on board a project before we even know whether it's going to get made, sometimes before the script has even been written. We'll help the scriptwriter to pitch their idea to broadcasters, and then if it gets commissioned, then we'll work with the writer right through the filming process. I've worked for a lot of different companies over the years, from Ardent Animations to Working Title Films, Red Planet Pictures, who make a very popular crime show called Death in Paradise, to Andy Serkis's production company Imaginarium. One of the most common assumptions I hear is that writing books and writing scripts are really different. And they can be, but not necessarily in the way that you might think. I'm going to talk you through some of the similarities and differences of novel and script writing. We'll look at some scripts, all of which are freely available on the BBC Writers' Room website as of August 2021. Now, for those of you who haven't come across it, BBC Writers' Room is an amazing resource if you're interested in script writing. You know how they say that if you want to be an author, you need to really love reading books? Well, any scriptwriter or editor will tell you that reading scripts is probably the most helpful thing you can do to learn how to write scripts as well. Okay, first off, let's break down some misconceptions. One of the most common assumptions I come across is that TV and film scripts are all about dialogue. I hear a lot of novelists say things like, "Oh, I'm going to adapt my book. I'll just take all the dialogue and put it on the page and that will make the script." And I'm always like, that couldn't be further from the truth. There's a reason it's called screenwriting. It's visual. Look at this script from Killing Eve.
So this is the opening page of the first episode of Killing Eve. And as you'll have seen, as you'll notice, there is absolutely no dialogue on this page whatsoever. We are being introduced to one of the main characters, Villanelle, in an incredibly visual way that shows us so much about her. It shows us that she maybe doesn't have the same kind of moral compass or the same set of rules for social behaviour as most people do. And it shows us that something odd, maybe slightly creepy, is going on in her world. And it's so much more dramatic and interesting and intriguing than if we had some kind of voiceover, or if we had someone, saying, "Oh, this person is not quite the same as other people." It just wouldn't have the same impact, would it? So visual clues in scripts are absolutely key.
This leads us on to our second misconception, that it is somehow easier to write a script. I can see why people might think this. A book can be thousands of pages long. Most of the time they're at least a few hundred pages. The average novel is between 70,000 to 120,000 words. That's a lot of scrivener use. Depending on what you're writing, a script can be anywhere between 50 to 150 pages long. We usually think about script length in terms of 1 page of script equals 1 minute of action on the screen. So if you're writing an hour-long TV episode, then you're looking at roughly 60 pages. If you're writing a feature film, maybe 90 to 120 pages. If we look at the script format, the page usually looks quite sparse, doesn't it? The dialogue is kind of squished together with very wide margins. There's a lot of white space. How long can it really take to fill that? Well, if you're writing a lot of meaningless dialogue, then sure, you'll probably fill the pages quite quickly. Just as if you want to, you could write a novel just by randomly hitting the letters on your keyboard until you've reached your 80,000 words or whatever. But to write a script well, every bit as hard as writing a novel well, because you have less space to fit the story in with a script. You have to make every single word count. A scene in a script should do most of these things: conflict and resolution, advance the story, show character, maintain or play with the tone, establish setting, reveal information. This is something you don't have to do kind of all at the same time in novel writing. You can be a bit looser. That's not to say that writing novels is easier than writing scripts. Just don't go thinking that just because a script is shorter that it's automatically easier. All writing is really, really hard. The other misconception is that scripts are kind of blueprints, or that you only get to show off your voice in the dialogue. That's not true either. There are some authors we all read because we love their writing style, aren't there? We know that we're going to get beautiful poetic language, or snappy raw prose, or really pacey storytelling. It's absolutely the same with screenwriting. Take a look at this script.
This is from the opening page, again, of The Dublin Murders, which is an adaptation of Tana French's novel by a screenwriter called Sarah Phelps, who is really well known for adapting Agatha Christie, among many other shows. And her voice is so interesting and so distinctive, and you read it in this description, this opening description of the setting, which is a kind of flashback. And it's just so atmospheric, and it gives so many clues and kind of directions almost to the rest of the crew when they come to actually film it. But it's conjuring up a moment in time, a temperature, a feeling of kind of claustrophobia, even though we're out in the open air. If we read just these few lines from that page: mothers roll their skirts over their knees, show white legs to the sun, smoking. It's too hot to gossip. Reddening men in plastic garden chairs get even more red. I mean, that's could be straight out of a novel, couldn't it? And yet that's absolutely the kind of thing that you can put into a script, and it immediately catches the eye. It conjures up an image, which is, after all, as we've just said, what is important with script writing and screen storytelling, is creating those visual images, and it's got a real sense of style and voice.
So you can definitely get your voice across in a script just as much as you can in a novel. There are writers like Michaela Cole or Phoebe Waller-Bridge or James Graham where I can see something that they have written without having read the credits and know that it was them who've written it, because their voices are so distinctive and they bleed into the screen itself, really. So those are some of the misconceptions. Now let's take a look at some of the differences between book and script writing. With a script, you need momentum and plot. A lot of my work for production companies used to involve reading books to see if they'd be suitable for adaptation. Often I would read a fantastic book, sometimes one that would become a lifelong favourite, but not be able to recommend it for adaptation. And one of the key reasons for that was because there wasn't a clear through line for the plot, and no easy way to make one without compromising the soul of the novel. Screen storytelling, especially commercial screen, always starts out with a question that will be answered by the end of the film. And what that question is will usually, although not always, be determined by the genre. Will they save the world? Will they find the killer? Will these two characters fall in love? On TV, especially in longer running series, the questions might be a little broader, a bit more open-ended to allow for the continuation of the series. So, how will the chemistry teacher become a successful drug dealer? Where will the alien and their time and space travelling box take the humans to next? Will these trainee lawyers get away with murder? Who will win the Game of Thrones? You get the picture. All of a script's scenes should be moving forward that question for us in some way. When writing a book, we don't have to find the same kind of momentum. We can take a little bit more time. We can go on diversions that aren't all heading in the direction of that end point. We can have some flashbacks, we can have some backstory without necessarily impacting the pace, which is much harder to do when you're writing a script. That brings me on to our next difference, which is that in scripts, we know who our characters are by what they do. I talked just now about things that made me not recommend books for adaptation, even if they were really, really good. One of those things is having a really passive main character, or a character whose actions can't be externalized in some way. When we're writing prose, we can explain our characters' motivations, we can give some backstory, we can open up their hearts and minds and expose the thoughts and emotions boiling inside, even if on the outside the character's doing this. On screen, we don't have that ability. We can't tell the audience what a character's thoughts are unless we use voiceover, which is a tricky device and not usually recommended for reasons I'm not going to go into here. So we rely on what a character does to show us who they are. Take a look at this script.
So this is a scene from the first episode of Years and Years by Russell T Davies, which came out a few years ago. And this is a very telling scene again, or a very showing scene, should we say, between a couple who have been married maybe, I think, 1 or 2 years by this point. And Rafe says, "Pass me the soap." "Daniel, what are you doing that for?" "Rafe, I just had a shit downstairs and you tell me off when I run the tap." "Daniel, have you got shitty hands?" And then Rafe carries on washing his hands in the shower over Daniel's head. And then Daniel, "Well, don't, get off, stop it." Daniel, trapped, half trying to dodge the water. Rafe, "I'm done." Hands the soap back to Daniel. Daniel, "That's disgusting." Rafe, "Your rules." And Rafe hops down to dry his hands, but that's how the relationship is now, niggly. Now, in a novel, you might be able to just say their relationship had become niggly. But Russell T Davies found a way to show that in a way that is kind of funny and very much in his authorial voice and his style of writing. Funny, quite raw, quite telling, quite down to earth, and really shows us as an audience exactly what that relationship has become, so that we understand, even though we won't be reading the script while we're watching the show, that this relationship is now niggly.
And lastly, remember that with a script, you are not the only creative voice. If you're a traditionally published author, you will probably have a brilliant and extensive team of people around you. Editors, proofreaders, sensitivity readers, publicists, marketing, audiobook editors and narrators, cover designers, translators, so many more. But ultimately the product, the words, down to you. Everything a reader takes from the story is your voice. With screen storytelling, the script is a huge part of the process, but it doesn't represent the finished product. The director, cinematographer, art department, composer, editor, and many, many others will use your script as inspiration and contribute their own creative skills to bring it to life, and in some cases improve it. If you read any script of a produced film or TV show and then watch it on screen, you will see how things like camera angles, edits, lighting, setting, and music all add extra layers and meaning and texture to the script. And sometimes those emphasize the writer's voice, sometimes they add to it. If you like to have ultimate control over your storytelling, then maybe script writing wouldn't be for you. But if you enjoy collaboration, then it can actually be really liberating to see how other creative minds take your writing and your vision and make it fly. That's all for our little workshop today. Thank you for watching. If you would like to get in touch with me or ask me any questions about this workshop, then you can find me on most social media. My website is www.hollyrace.com. My Twitter is @Ecarillo, which is my name spelled backwards, and my Instagram is @Holly_race. And I love getting messages, so do drop me a line. Bye.